Welcome along, I'm Justin Briley and this is the first of a few video updates on the Atheist Prayer Experiment, which I'm the person sort of responsible for putting together. I run a weekly radio discussion show on Premier Christian Radio called Unbelievable, and I've been inviting atheists and agnostics to pray for 40 days during September and October for God to reveal himself to them. Bit of a crazy experiment, but really interestingly, a lot of people have got on board. So we've got nearly 70 atheists signed up now for this. It's already started. As we record, we're on day 4 of the experiment. So I wanted to give you a bit of an update about some of the things that have been going on during the course of the last few days. One interesting thing is that 2 people have dropped out already. Very different stories about why they dropped out. Let me read you Ben, who was an atheist who wanted to take part. He tried it for one day, but said, I tried my prayer, but you know what? I'm just incredibly staunchly atheist. God does not exist. And he goes on to say, if God does exist, it's obviously some kind of sadomasochist, not the type of being I would ever wish to worship. And you know what? I'm definitely not being narrow-minded. I'm free to think, free to practice my thoughts, and free to say my thoughts out loud wherever I so wish. So I hope you appreciate my honesty. I promise I began this in the best of faith, but simply cannot continue, says Ben. Interestingly, the other person who dropped out for entirely the opposite reason. In fact, she dropped out before the experiment began. That was Kendra, who, after having got in touch, got the information about it, emailed me to say, I'm going to have to withdraw from the experiment as I've decided to commit my life to Christ. I took a bit of a double take at that, as I'm sure you may have, but she says, I think it was through doing the research on the experiment and listening to podcasts, etc., made me realise that I need Christ in my life. I do believe in God, so I'm no longer an atheist. Thank you for letting me join and for opening up my eyes. Well, interesting start to the experiment. As it's been going on, though, it's been interesting to see the variety of people who are taking part. Atheists, agnostics, some of them obviously very firm, some of them a bit more open. Many of them actually former Christians. So I could read you Vincent, who got in touch from California, saying he'd sign up, but he spent 25 years as a devoted Christian till one summer he started asking deep, hard questions and decided that really Christianity didn't make sense. This similar sort of story from Brian, who says he was a Christian for 42 years, took his faith very seriously, was a strong apologist even, sometimes led his Sunday school class, attended church. Then one day I woke up and my faith was just gone, he says. But he says, with all that said, I hope this experiment works, because this was not a decision I made, it's just how I feel. And if I got to decide, I would choose Christianity. So that's an interesting couple of stories of people who are entering this experiment. Let's go to some of the actual people who are blogging and talking about it now. It's interesting, a lot of people have decided they don't want to actually do any interaction during the course of the experiment. They say, I'd rather sort of just do this by myself so that I can't, as it were, be influenced in different directions. But there's also a lot of people who are putting up a blog, interacting on the Facebook group, which you can find at facebook.com/groups/atheistprayerexperiment. And there's been a lot of interesting conversation going on there. Let me tell you about Spooky Valiket. He's actually videoing every single prayer that he says and sort of commenting on it afterwards. Very strange experience, actually. Quite an intensely personal thing to see someone praying, especially when they don't know what they're praying to. Then there's also Charlie, who's doing a similar thing. And the question is, well, how hard can it be to fill a few minutes with prayer? Well, Spooky Valiket, like many, suffers from this issue of, well, once I've asked God to reveal himself, what else do I actually say? What am I supposed to pray? Here's Freki, what she says she's doing. She says, I went and sat behind the Japanese garden on campus, found a quiet spot, put my feet in the water and gave myself 10 minutes to reflect on the beauty of what it is that I keep hearing is creation. So that's the way that she's sort of meditating after she's said her prayer. There's also the question of, what would people be prepared to count as an answer to their prayer? What would evidence look like? Here's one of our female contributors again. This is a former charismatic Christian. She's going under the name Paddy McGingersnap. She wrote about her first day like this. She said, hello God, if you do exist, I realise you're probably a little busy right now, what with half the world going around setting fire to things, but I wonder if you could possibly take some time out to reveal yourself to me. She says, this is how I felt praying this morning. I found it hard to concentrate, partly because my mind is always a bit like a butterfly on cocaine, But no major revelations, though when I went out for coffee, a busker was outside Starbucks playing the tune to what used to be one of my favourite hymns. I'm not persuaded that was God waving at me, but it did lift my spirits. Well, on the subject of coincidences, American atheist Brian Heagney is trying out the atheist prayer experiment. He says, I have to share these two odd, unrelated coincidences. After the first day of the prayer experiment, well, I've been job searching for the last few months, and I finally found an amazing job that I'm more than qualified for. And then after the second day of taking part, Eric Hovind, who's a well-known Christian personality in the US, personally calls me out of the blue. I sent him an email a long time ago and he was just now getting back to it. Gee, I wonder what's going to happen tomorrow, says Brian. Well, the question is, can coincidences count as an answer? A number of people have been online saying no, that's just coincidences, and when you do this kind of an experiment you're probably more open to seeing connections and coincidences as God-incidences, so we should be very wary of that. But does that mean that God can't communicate that way? All interesting questions, and we're going to be looking into those more as we go through the atheist prayer experiment. Probably all I've got time for on this occasion, but I hope you'll come back next time. I'll do another update soon as we continue to look at some of the experiences of people who are on the atheist prayer experiment. You can find out more by visiting premier.org.uk/atheist prayer experiment.